getting started a little late today because very bad weather in Washington has resulted in a lot of people getting stuck in traffic, and so I didn't get here. So we're going to start about now. I think we have the other three participants on the phone, Dr. Alex, John Menkins, and Dr. Kalam. Is that true? Can you guys hear me?
Yes. This is Dr. Alex from Bangalore. I am online.
Okay. Is Dr. Kalam on?
He's asking if Dr. Kalam on.
Yes, Dr. Kalam here.
Okay. And
I am ready.
is John Menkins online?
This is John Menkins. Yes, I'm online.
Okay, Dr. Kalam, you have limited time. We're starting a bit late. Are you going to be able to stay around for another half hour or so?
You're not ready.
We're not. We are about to start, but we're starting late.
You're starting late.
Yes.
Okay, you tell me what time, another how much time will take? He's Kalam here.
Okay. We'll be asking you to speak in about 15 minutes. Will that work for you?
15 minutes.
15 minutes, okay for me.
Okay.
Okay. I heard in Bangalore, Alex here, so we'll restart at 15 minutes from now.
All right.
Okay, we agreed.
Okay. Then let's get started. Obviously, we're here at the Kalam to talk about the Kalam National Space Society Initiative. Here are the participants, three of which are calling in by phone. Next slide. I'll do just a very short introduction of myself in order to save time. I'm chair of the executive committee of the National Space Society. I've been involved in the National Space Society for a long time. I was the person who instigated the merger that created the National Space Society in 1987. And I've been involved for 34 years on the board and 28 years as an officer of one type or another. In terms of professional credentials, I have degrees in economics from Harvard and Caltech, and I'm a former RAND employee, so I'm basically an economist. Although I have some technical background as well. Next slide. Now here's the plan for today. First 15 minutes or so, I'm going to set the stage for our later speakers, and we'll be talking. I'll give a brief description of solar power, space solar power, for those people that in the audience who are not familiar with the concept. Some of its potential benefits. We'll then talk about the Kalam NSS initiative and some of the advantages of cooperation in terms of this initiative for the United States and India. And then we'll have Dr. Kalam speak for about 10 minutes, followed by John Menkins for about 5, and Dr. T.K. Alex from Bangalore about 5 minutes, and then we'll take questions. Okay, next slide. Space power, solar power has numerous options. And this is one of its strengths, because if one approach doesn't work out that well, we can go with another approach. There are different proposals for collecting energy from the sun and space. There's different proposals for sending that energy down to Earth. There are different ideas about what orbits these space solar power satellites should be located in, and a whole bunch of different ideas about various components and how to make them. What I'm going to talk about today very briefly is sort of the base case scenario, which is the one which has been studied the most. And what this involves is a large array of solar cells in space. They collect the sun's energy, much like solar cells would on the ground, convert it to electricity. The electricity is then converted to a microwave beam, which is then sent down to the Earth. And it's received on what's called a rectenna, which converts the electricity, converts the microwave beam back into electricity, which is then fed into the power grid just like any other power plant. An obvious issue is how does this compare with a ground-based solar? Obviously, doing things in space, it tends to be more expensive than doing them on the ground. There's two major advantages and some lesser advantages with regards to space solar power when we're talking about it as compared to ground-based. One is that the energy intensity in space is about 7 times greater per unit area as it is on the Earth. And this is due to a number of reasons. The two most important are the day-night cycle, because in space you get the energy basically all the time. On the ground you only get it during the day. And also you get bad weather from time to time, and that will knock out your solar power on the ground. But the beam from the satellite has a frequency which will go right through bad weather, and so it's not affected. And the fact that it's on 24/7, it gives you your second major advantage, and that is you don't have to store power for the night or when there's bad weather, and storing power is very expensive. Next slide, please. Let's have a video, and this video was produced by Chris Holland for us. And this video will depict what I was just talking about, show you an example of a space solar power station space. This is your satellite over here. You have some mirrors here, which are concentrating the sun's energy on this thing, which is where the solar cells are. Solar cells are then converting that energy into electricity, which then is going down by microwave. These little rings here are depicting that. Actually, it's a straight line, it's not little rings. The power then goes down to the rectenna on the ground, this thing here. Rectenna can be used to dual use. You can put agriculture under it. Rectenna itself looks like sort of like chicken wire, so you can put stuff under it. And then the power is going off to light the sea. Okay, the next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, let's look at some of the benefits of space solar power. One of the big ones is that the amount of electricity that can be obtained is truly enormous because it's based on the sun. The sun puts out about 1 to 10 trillion, that's trillion with a T, times the amount of energy which the human race currently uses. And therefore, by taking just a small fraction of that energy and bringing it down to Earth, we can solve all of our energy needs now and into the foreseeable future. Now, that doesn't mean we'll necessarily not use other options, but we can basically use this for dealing with all the shortfall that might occur for other reasons. Next, it's very environmentally benign. You have this beam. People sometimes worry about the beam, but the beam is a fairly low intensity, and it comes down over a fairly large area, and that's done because we want it to do it that way, and also because of various physics parameters. But as a consequence, you can walk through the beam, even if you're naked, and it's not going to hurt you. Also, birds can fly through the beam, so that gives you an idea of how benign it is. In addition, we're talking about putting this space solar power. One of the things which it economizes on the use of land, because the rectenna on the ground is much smaller than an equivalent field of, say, solar cells. And also, you can use dual use. You can use the land for other reasons as well. You can even put ground-based solar under the rectenna. And that's particularly important in India, where there is very serious land constraints. And the next one is that it produces virtually no carbon dioxide. And therefore, it's a very clean, renewable energy source. And that's great news when you start talking about mitigating climate change. Have some other people in the room. You want to sit down here? Some empty seats. Okay, next slide. Some additional benefits. So one of the things that the United States is worried about, and it's also a problem in India, is energy independence. If we have all this electricity coming down, then we don't have to worry about sources of energy from other countries, which are expensive and also can be not necessarily there when we want them. And it can also, instead of having the United States and India be a net energy importer on a large scale, if we build space solar power, we can also export the energy, because this beam from the satellite, it not only can go down to India and the United States, but we can beam it to virtually any other place in the world as well and sell the resulting power. And as a result, because of the large amount of the power we're talking about, India and the United States can become major net exporters of energy. to an even larger extent than Saudi Arabia is today. Another problem that this alleviates is one of the things that the U.S. Defense Department is increasingly worried about is, okay, if we don't do anything like space solar power, there could easily be a lot of scarcity of energy, with prices going high, with a lot of this energy being concentrated in countries which are not necessarily all that stable. There could be, this is reason to believe there could be a conflict over these energy supplies. But if we have a lot of energy from space, then this problem is greatly mitigated. Next slide. Now let's look at the Kalam National Space Society Initiative per se. This is a 13-page initiative, and it's aimed basically at getting the space solar power program started. And the first major step after this press conference for doing that is we are going to have a conference in May at the Von Braun Center in Huntsville, Alabama. And the plan here is we're going to fly in like 15 to 25 major experts from India, some are numbered from the United States, and we'll sit down and work out what the next steps will be. And to do that, we have two principal investigators who've already agreed to do this, one of which is, on the Indian side, is T.K. Alex, who's director of the Indian Space Research Organization, Satellite Center, and he's on the phone. The Indian Space Research Organization is the equivalent of the Indian NASA. And the Satellite Center is one of their big centers. They have like 3 major centers. We have like 10 in the United States. So this is sort of the loose equivalent of 3 of our centers rolled into one. And on the American side, we have John Mankins. He's the world's leading authority on space solar power, and he will be the American principal investigator. Next slide, please. Okay, why is cooperation, what's behind this? I mean, why cooperate with India? One of the things which sort of greases the wheels for this is the fact that we have so much in common with India. We have this shared British colonial history. We have democracy. We have the English language. We are both very strong proponents of religious freedom and tolerance in general. We're opposed to terrorism. We also have concerns about energy independence, which I mentioned. We both have a strong desire to mitigate climate change. And there's strong public interest in space in both countries. In fact, in India right now, it can be argued that there's more interest on the part of the Indian public in space than any other country in the world. Next slide. The advantages of American-Indian cooperation, there are a lot, and I just put up a few here. Basically talking about a combination of American technology and the ability of India to do a lot of low-cost manufacturing, and the potential of combining those two could generate a very large number of jobs in both countries. We are already doing a lot with India with regards to the areas of energy, climate change, space. We have a number of agreements. Even without space solar power, the number and importance of these agreements is very likely to increase. And of course, to some extent, what we're talking about here is accelerating this trend, which is already happening with regards to cooperation in this area. India has long been a leader of the non-aligned nations. And one of the things that we're going to need to do in order to bring to full potential space solar power is have a number of international agreements and regulations over frequencies and stuff like that. And India will be able to help quite a bit with that. And finally, India is rapidly rising, and this is in the interest of both nations. And we in the United States would be interested in accelerating this rise. Neither of our nations wishes to contain China. However, a prosperous India increases the probability that the rise of China will be peaceful. And that's the interest of both the United States, India, I think China, and not the whole world. I'd like to add one other point, and that is India is rapidly becoming a more influential country on the world scene. And everybody, particularly economic circles, believes that this will continue. India has a lot of shared values with us. It is important for both countries to have a cooperative, friendly relationship so that the combined influence on the world scene of the two world's largest democracies will be important and of growing importance over time. And this is good for not only the two countries, but in my opinion, for the world as a whole. Next slide. Now I'm going to introduce Dr. Kalam is going to be our first speaker. This guy is truly amazing if you look at his resume. It's just unbelievable. He's former president of India, okay? That's for starters. But he's not just a politician. He's a world-renowned engineer and scientist, particularly in the area of aerospace. Look at some of the things he's done. He was project director for India's first satellite launcher, as well as several more advanced satellite launchers after that. He's a former scientific advisor to the Defense Minister of India. He's currently Chancellor of the Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology. He has a nickname of the Missile Man of India, and he's incredibly popular. He's one of the most, according to Reader's Digest poll, which was done in 2010, he's one of the 2 most trusted men in India. This guy is not only a politician of presidential scale, not only an engineer and scientist of the top rank, but he's also a statesman and an incredible visionary, which is one of the reasons that I think he's involved in this. So with that, let's have some remarks from Dr. Kalam. You ready to go?
I'm ready. This is Kalam here.
Okay.
Start. You are ready?
Yes, go.
I heard the John Hopkins his presentation. So in continuation, I will say that the type of experience I had in Indian Space Research Organization and also Defense Research and Development Organization, system design and system integration and system management. This is very important, and later it was a great experience for me working for India 2020 development mission with many specialists, that is transforming India into an economically developed nation another 10 years' time. When I was the President of India, one of the areas my focus was leading to world knowledge platform in critical areas for welfare of the humanity, for bringing together core competence of multiple countries. I presented to an international forum at Boston on World Space Vision 2050, how the spacefaring nation could cooperate and build on this. I discussed this with many space organizations and experts. I have been proposing that large societal missions, like bringing space solar power to Earth, would need the combined efforts of nations. One day, I was pleasantly surprised to hear from Howard Bloom, my friend, suggesting that he would be interested in conversing with me on harvesting power from space. He told me that Edwin Aldrin has also been a great votary of space solar power. So we had a detailed interaction, and I addressed subsequently the International Space Development Conference Chicago on the subject harvesting energy from space. I suggested they may pave the way for international feasibility study. They liked the idea, and I christened this. It was christened in this initiative my name. I have talked to Chairman ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, Dr. Radhakrishnan, Dr. Alex, Director ISRO Satellite Center, who is on the phone just now, and other specialists in our country. They have encouraged me to take the idea forward. I know National Space Society is quite committed to that idea. Probably our vision is to market the idea to countries so that it can move from individual society, organization to the national level initiative. I take it that Kalam is just incidental. I stand on the shoulders of all those individuals who have passion for solar power from space, such as pioneer in space solar power station like Dr. P. Glaser. So, friends, this is what I thought of introducing, and I'm willing to take any questions.
All right, since we are short on time, and there's time constraints on Dr. Kalam's time. We will take questions for Dr. Kalam now, and then have the other speakers a bit later. Yes.
Dr. Kalam, this is...
Give it to me, and I'll repeat it.
Could you ask him if this is going to be on the agenda in the upcoming summit between President Obama and Prime Minister Singh?
Dr. Kalam, the question is, will any of this be on the agenda for the upcoming summit between President Obama and Prime Minister Singh?
Well, I personally believe it's a beautiful question, and because our country is very busy in preparing for receiving your President Obama. Now, both of them, that is your President and our Prime Minister, are concerned leaders on the energy scenario of the world. They have been taking initiatives on energy independence, research, and energy missions. I have told the National Space Society to bring to the attention of the world leaders on the prospects, the challenges of solar power from space. NSS, just now, Mr. Mark Hopkins said that they are going to have an international conference in USA in May 2011. I felt that's a time we should derive the recommendation of the world body, the technical teams, and we should present to G8 and G20 nations. Over.
Yes. The main thing which has to be done, which is why there's a research program, is to find ways to lower the cost. We can do space solar power technology. We can do it now. The problem is the cost is too high. So that's why we need a research effort by India and the United States to bring that cost down. That's generally true with most renewable sources of energy. But there's no, unlike say fusion, there is no problem with regards to developing major pushes in physics. These should be questions for Dr. Kalam.
Dr. Kalam, this is Subhash Paradkar.
I'll repeat your question.
From Maharashtra. It's mentioned here that solar power in space can upgrade the living standards of the human race. It's a larger goal. But in the developed world, we don't have drinking water for the people in the villages. That's the same stuff in the Middle East, where they cannot grow food, and that is water and food is essential. How does solar power help them get drinking water? Only 2% of the world's water is drinking water. We don't have water in England.
Dr. Kalam, the question is, how can space solar power help the world's poor in poor nations, such as villages in India, which particularly, I think there's a lot of villages in India which don't even have electricity currently, and there's also an issue of drinking water. So, Dr. Kalam, did you hear that question?
Well, it's a question. We have in India about 600,000 villages and 700 million people live there. 70% of our people have lived. And naturally, and it is a coastal region, the hilly region, and forest region, and also desert region. So this we feel by the solar power generation, solar power that all the 24 hours when you put the solar power satellite in the geosynchronous orbit, so efficiency nearly 100%. So that power, if we build a mechanism that is to transmit the power, that is the real subject of discussion. How do we transmit the power generated in space to the surfaces, in the earth surfaces. That's an area. There are many possibilities. One possibility we are discussing whether it is a microwave system or it is a laser-based system. And I have proposed what is called energy nano packages. That is an idea I have put forth. This nano packages, a power package, it can both space and earth it will move. And that's in the form of an energy package, and we can retransfer as the energy source. So these are the three aspects we have to consider the solar power transmission from the space. But after all, it's a big challenge, but definitely we have to do particularly for India with vast rural base and hilly region and desert region and coastal region. This type of integrated system of a solar power system and the distribution and networking, the distribution network will be one of the very important things we are going to consider in the discussion.
Okay, another question?
Over.
Yes. Yeah.
For Dr. Kalam, what unique resources, capabilities, or other skills can India bring to make a space solar power project a reality?
Dr. Kalam, the question is, what unique resources can India provide to help build space solar power satellites?
This question, unique way, India has got a core competence in designing what is called hyperplane. The hyperplane, normally when the satellite launch vehicle takes off, it takes off weight to the only 2% or 3% of the payload put in the orbit. This our hyperplane study in India has revealed we can use 15% efficiency, that is payload we can carry for 100 tons takeoff weight, about 10 to 15 tons of payload we can put in the orbit. This is what study we have made. This is because we are reusable system, and also we are collecting the air as an oxidizer, and the new technology we have proposed like scramjet system. So India has got the capacity in design and development of a launch vehicle. For example, the reusable launch vehicle possible, and we can cooperate with USA and other nations. And today our problem is going to be, how do you bring $20,000 per orbital kilogram? Now to put 1 kilogram of a spacecraft weight, that is 1 kilogram orbital weight, I call it costs $20,000. Now, for solar power satellite success, we need a launch vehicle system which can put number of times we can reuse it, and also the type of cost it will bring down from $20,000 at least $2,000 per orbital kilogram. So this is India can cooperate. In India we have one of the technology, we always have such an experience with at low cost access to the space is possible. So this experience India can share with the nations, other spacefaring nations. Next question. Next question.
Next question is, where would the funding be coming from for space solar power satellites?
Well, funding, that is, we have to see that, we have to market. First of all, we have to market that how you are getting in the carbon neutral system. That is, today, the citizens of Earth, 6 billion people, we have taken away whatever possible from Earth. Now you have to regenerate the Earth. That means we have to make at least now from fossil fuel, we have to graduate. Already big movement going on in USA and India to graduate from fossil fuel to renewable energy system. So the question is whether terrestrial renewable system or space solar system. Space solar system has got an advantage, all the 24 hours Earth and irradiance available and the energy available, and indeed terrestrial solar power is a promising area for the future. However, it has a limitation, terrestrial solar power. First, the level of solar irradiance is about 1.5 times in the extraterrestrial level than at the surface of the Earth. Second, in case of surface-based solar power plant, the panel can collect solar power about for only 8 to 10 hours a day. That means as long as sun shines. Whereas, in the case of space-based solar power plant, the collection time is full 24 hours. Also, the space-based solar power plants are not affected by weather conditions, which will bring down the efficiency in case of terrestrial power plant. Hence, I believe with this advantage of solar power satellites, the conference what we are going to have in USA in the middle of the next year, definitely we have to market this idea to the political system of various countries. We have to market it. After all, any system we want to achieve with advantage, because our marketing trend should be, advantage should be, how do we make the Earth livable for more than 6 billion people? That is carbon free from the fossil fuel. How do you graduate from fossil fuel to solar power? That is the marketing point for technical and scientific people, and to how to market to the political system. I can help people in that area.
I think we have time for one more question before we move on to our other speakers. Yes. The last question, Dr. Kalam, is to what extent have you thought about integrating space solar power into the solar activities which are currently going on in India with regards to ground-based solar?
The National Solar Mission.
Specifically, the National Solar Mission.
Yes. India has solar power mission, terrestrial solar power mission. By 2020, they want to generate 20,000 megawatt power. And by 2050, they want to go 50,000 megawatt power. But my feeling is our demand is is going to increase because of the industrial activities and agriculture activities and service sector activities. So we need the energy, extra energy sources. I think solar power satellite will meet the requirement not only India and USA and many other countries.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kalam. We're going to move on to our other speakers. You can leave now or stay for the rest of the conference, which will be about a half hour. John Mankins, are you on the phone? Next slide.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, let me introduce you. John Mankins was Chief of the Operating Officer at Managed Energy Technologies. That's his current company. He's also president of Space Power Association, which is a nonprofit organization. He had a 25-year career at NASA. At one point at NASA, he was running an $800 million per year R&D program. But the two most important points are the ones at the bottom. For many years, he was in charge of space solar power activities and research at NASA. And today is the world's leading expert on space solar power. So, John, please go forward.
Hey, good morning. I'm sorry that I'm not able to be there at the press conference in D.C. I'm actually out in California, where it is a beautiful dawn just starting here. I'd like to just comment on this dialogue between India and the U.S. It actually goes back a number of years, in fact, over a decade, in thinking at the working level about the prospects for both the two nations and for the world in developing the capability to deliver power, solar power from space, pretty much anywhere on the planet and on demand. And this idea has been discussed both in a series of preliminary meetings over time involving the two countries as well as others, and has, as Mark Hopkins mentioned in the first part of the press conference, matured into this idea, which is embodied in the Kalam National Space Society Space Solar Power Initiative, to try to organize a systems-level end-to-end study as well as preliminary workshops and meetings on the topic of space solar power. I think one of the critical things to keep in mind regarding this capability is that it has enormous promise to deliver power globally, power that would be a very green, very low carbon footprint, but also that we're not quite ready to do it yet, and that both further design and definition studies are needed, as well as the maturation, the development, the demonstration of key technologies, including things like wireless power transmission, which President Kalam was mentioning a few minutes ago, and other technologies related to lowering the mass of spacecraft systems, reducing their cost, and enabling the in-space assembly and deployment of these exceptionally large spacecraft concepts. So on the one hand, this is a concept. Space solar power is a concept which holds enormous promise, as great or greater than the promise which is often ascribed to fusion energy in the future. And it has some remaining technical challenges. Obviously, we're not ready to begin full-scale development at this moment. But having said both of those things, one, its great promise, and two, its need for further development, I would just close my remarks by saying that there has been an ongoing assessment of this concept for the last several years by the International Academy of Astronautics, and in the spring, hopefully that report will be coming out, and it will provide a backdrop for the ongoing studies, workshops, and discussions, and hopefully research and development as we go forward next year. So that's it for my opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next slide, please. Our last speaker is Dr. T.K. Alex. As I mentioned earlier, he's director of the Indian Space Research Organization Satellite Center. He and Mankins are going to be our principal investigators at our conference. He's been responsible, he's quite an engineer and scientist. He was responsible for the sensor systems in literally all of India's satellites to date. He led the Chandrayaan-1 project. This is the first lunar probe of India. Was involved in finding water on the moon, and is currently directing the development of Chandrayaan-2 and 16 other Indian satellites. Dr. Alex, would you please address the audience?
This is Dr. Alex from Bangalore, India. Let me first of all convey my greetings from India on the eve of Diwali. This is a festival of light. What we are discussing is how to convert light into energy. So this is the appropriate time. Let me convey my greetings to all of you there. The Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, is responsible for launching Indian satellites for communication, remote sensing, and scientific applications. ISRO has the technology for harnessing solar energy for powering satellites on board in kilowatt range. Meeting the energy needs of the people and the entire world in the coming decades is a priority subject for India. Among many methods of using non-conventional energy, harnessing solar power from space has got the attention of the entire space community. The advancement of solar cell development with advanced efficiency almost reaching 40%, and also lightweight materials using nanotechnology in the recent times has enabled us to have a relook at this option. It is known that such a proposal can become reality only if the cost of launching the satellites into outer space is made economical. Many agencies are working on reducing the cost of space transportation. ISRO is also working on this. The initiative by Kalam NSS is really a commendable one. A preliminary team has been identified in Indian Space Research Organization to initiate a feasibility study on this renewed proposal. It is important to note that the proposals of this magnitude cannot be undertaken by a single agency or a single country. It is noted that similar initiatives have been made from the United States as well. It is advantageous to pool up all the resources of multiple agencies for the benefit of the people. I would like to thank once again Dr. APJ Kalam and NSS for taking up this lead at the right time. Thank you.
All right. Now we'll have questions for any of the speakers. Yes, the back there. Could you repeat that?
Well, is there any quantitative data on what the cost per unit mass would be for getting any materials to orbit?
John, I think this is a question that you best can answer. What cost estimates currently exist for accomplishing the space solar power concept?
The last thorough end-to-end system studies that led to what I would characterize as rigorous cost analysis go back to the mid-1990s. It's been a number of years since there's been a good end-to-end systems analysis. I can indicate, and that's one of the things that we're advocating now is needed at this time. I can tell you that the requirement, what the goal is in terms of research and development in the field, is to target the goal of 10 cents per kilowatt hour, and essentially this translates into three high-level characteristics that an economically viable space solar power system would have to have, and that is that the mass of the platform in space would need to be roughly or not more than 3 kilograms per kilowatt of power delivered, that the cost, the deployed cost of that system in space would need to be not more than or approximately $3,000 per kilogram, and that translates into essentially an installed cost of about $10 per watt for space solar power, and that the operational lifetime of the system, of any particular system element, would need to be at least 15 or 20 years. And if you translate those things forward, what you end up with parametrically is a goal of about 10 cents per kilowatt hour, which would allow space solar power to be highly competitive with other available alternatives for green energy terrestrially.
Okay, another question. Yes.
What is the percentage of the government R&D funding there as a percentage of GDP?
In the United States, or?
United States R&D. For the Indian government, like we have backup. We do not. Indian government, we have R&D funding.
So the question is?
Percentage of India's GDP.
That's done for R&D? Okay, the question is, and I think maybe Dr. Alex or Kalam, if he's still on. What is the percentage of Indian GDP which is spent on research and development currently? Dr. Alex, are you still on?
Yes, Dr. Alex here. Will you repeat the question?
What percentage of the gross domestic product of India is currently spent on research and development?
The percentage, I have no direct answer, but it's quite large, considering the research laboratories under the government as well as under the universities. Put together, it's a very large number. The students coming out of the university is also pretty large. So we have a good manpower strength to take up research work. Thank you.
Another question? Yes. Okay. Is Dr. Kalam still on? No. Okay. Dr. Alex, maybe you can address this one.
Are you on?
Oh, you're still on, Dr. Kalam?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay.
I'm there. What Alex answered about the GDP, R&D GDP in India, I would like to add that whatever he said, it works out to 2.5% of our GDP for R&D, 2.5% of the GDP. That's what we are spending.
Okay. Dr. Kalam, the question is, what's the earliest reasonable date at which space solar power might be available?
Well, I personally believe it is a project of about 15 years project, and I have suggested 3-phase studies, and the first 50 year some sort of a prototype will come in the launch vehicle and also in the space solar power. At 10th year, some sort of trials and testing. 15 years, I believe it is a 15-year project and international project. It is not all the spacefaring nations have to be the partner, and their best core competence has been shared. For example, India's core competence, cost-effective systems, and also certain unique technology of the propulsion, and also now we are working on the electronic system, and we can share country to country, and so that synergic effect will come. It should be an integrated program of multi-nations, and we have to share. Some countries should develop the reusable technology, some countries should develop nanotechnology for solar power panel, some countries should develop the integration of the multiple system. So I believe it is probably we can discuss in the solar power conference which is scheduled this issue of which are the countries which can take up what type of task.
Okay, next question.
April 15 years I told you. Yes.
I have
yes, sir.
two separate questions, if I may. My first one is directed to John Mankins, which is as a former NASA director, whether NASA is actually aware of this current initiative, and if so, whether there are plans to get that space agency on board. So that's my first question. My second question.
Let's handle them one at a time.
Okay.
John, the question is NASA aware of this initiative, and are they likely to get on board, or what's your opinion about that?
In terms of whether or not they are familiar with the current Kalam NSS and Space Solar Power Initiative, they're certainly aware of the ongoing dialogue and the discussions that have involved India. As I said, they've go back several years. I have not personally briefed them on this topic, so I don't know if they're aware of the initiative which is being announced today. I think in my past, in recent discussions with NASA, their emphasis, of course, has been increasingly during the past year in light of the President's 2011 budget on developing fundamentally new and transformational capabilities for space exploration, science, development, including a range of new advanced concept studies and things like game-changing technology development under the auspices of the new chief technologist, Bobby Braun. I think that depending on how it was undertaken, that there's a good chance that NASA would certainly support relevant technology developments. But in terms of a policy-level initiative, I think that would have to come through channels. I don't think that NASA would of its own accord initiate new policy activities with regard to international relations between the U.S. and India. That's the kind of thing that NASA is typically, they follow the lead from other policy formulation agencies in the White House or State Department. They don't lead in those areas.
Okay. Your second question?
My second question is for Dr. Alex, who mentioned during his speech that he would like to see a number of other space agencies also get involved. My question to him is whether he knows of whether the Israeli Space Agency in particular has been involved, given the high level of technical cooperation between India and Israel and the high level of military cooperation between those two states.
This is a question for Dr. Alex. Do you happen to know if there's interest in space solar power in Israel, and if there's been some dialogue between India and Israel concerning this issue?
This is Dr. Alex here. I have some idea of the type of work going on in other countries, not full details. However, we should be able to pool all the countries who are interested in this area. Basically, the good work is going on in Japan in the terrestrial area. They are also talking about going to the solar power from space. So we should have one lookout for all the like-minded countries who can join in this total endeavor. Thank you.
This is Kalam here, Mr. Mark Hopkins, Kalam here.
Yes, go ahead.
You know what Alex answered and what John Mankins answered. I want to convey to the friends who are assembled there the one important point: the solar power satellite is the way, by solar power satellite, how the planet Earth will be a clean planet, prosperous planet, and the happy planet. This has to be an international effort with multiple stakeholders. All our difference will get minimized with space leadership and participation from G8, G20 country leaders. Instead of Cold War and conflict, we need to move towards warmth of international compassion for better planet Earth. That means we are going to regenerate the planet Earth through solar power satellite. That's the point I would like to convey.
Hey, next question.
How does this space solar power concept compare with lunar solar power concept? Has that been looked at or examined or compared?
What do you mean by lunar solar power? There's several ideas.
I think there's I've seen a lot of papers in this area that they generate the power in lunar using the deuterium or something on the surface, that they transfer the power back to Earth.
Okay, the question is, and maybe John Mankins would be best to answer this, is how does this concept of solar power sent down to the Earth compared with solar power which is collected on the moon and then transmitted down to the Earth? John? John, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Sorry, I had the mute on. This is a very interesting question and one that's been looked at repeatedly over the last 25 years. This idea was originally formulated by Dr. Dave Criswell at the University of Houston. I think ultimately the moon or other extraterrestrial sources, resource sites are very, very promising in terms of their potential to provide materiel, both logistics and hardware, to future space solar power industries. However, I think that there are some very fundamental physical challenges in trying to deliver power directly from the lunar surface to the Earth, not least of which is the fact that the moon is about 10 times further away than geostationary Earth orbit. This makes the delivery of power not 10 times more difficult, but 100 times more difficult because of the physics of the power transmission systems. Also, the fact that the moon is only in one portion of the sky over the Earth at any given time means that a system of relay satellites or ground-based infrastructure, huge ground-based infrastructure, would be necessary to use the moon for substantial amounts of power. Those are just two of the principal challenges. There are a number of others. But ultimately, I think the moon and other bodies could certainly play a tremendous role in the future development of space, including space solar power. But I think that the argument at this time is largely against the use of the moon as a platform from which to deliver power directly to the Earth.
Okay, next question, yes.
Ask Dr. Alex, in addition to launch vehicle technology, what other types of technology India is working on that might be applicable here, specifically high efficiency solar cells and power transmission?
Dr. Alex, this is for you. The question is, what other things is India working on that might be of use to a space solar power project besides transportation, such as, what were the two things you mentioned?
High efficiency solar cells and power transmission.
Such as high efficiency solar cells and high efficiency transmission activities or devices.
Yeah, this Alex here. At present, we have a Ministry for Non-Conventional Energy. They are on the job of terrestrial solar power generation on a large scale. Some of the North Indian states where the solar power is available in abundance without cloud cover is going to be covered with the solar panels mostly in the open area. So the cell development of the terrestrial quality, we have industrial base to go for that. However, the research work is just in the initial stage for multi-junction cells and high-efficiency cells. So this is one area we could join hands with the agencies who have got better know-how. We also need to develop very lightweight solar cells. It should be flexible, not only high efficiency, they should be lightweight. So we need to do a lot of work in this area, but the prospects are very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if Dr. Alex or Dr. Mankins can talk about what they see as the goals for the next several months, what they expect the goals coming out of this May conference is going to be for this project, and also, sort of a related topic, is what level of technical detail interchange is going to be possible between the U.S. and India without running afoul of U.S. export control laws, which sharply regulate even the transfer of information on space technology.
John, maybe you should take this one. The question is, what sort of, at this conference that we're doing in May, what sort of technology dialogue do you think might occur and might come out of that? Specifically, what was your example?
Well, the question was what the goals were for the conference, and what level of technical detail can we get into without running afoul of export control.
Okay. What are the goals in a technical sense for this conference, and how much discussion can we do given the export constraints that the United States have, like ITAR?
sorry, Mark. Obviously there are going to be limitations to what we can do in any kind of initial discussion. But I think what can be anticipated if the proposal for this meeting is approved is that there will be a series of pre-prepared papers, very much like at a technical symposium, or it's a technical symposium organized around the technical challenges involved in space solar power. Those papers can be prepared ahead of time and can be reviewed and cleared by the respective organizations so that we are within the bounds, obviously, of ITAR restrictions. And then we can begin essentially the preliminary discussion on issues related to the programmatics, how we might organize future studies, how we might coordinate future technology activities without getting into in any depth in this initial meeting on the details of particular technologies.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Yes, Dallas. John, why don't you take this one too? The question is, what would be a typical size for a prototype for space solar power?
Well, I was challenged on this a couple of years ago after the National Security Space Office did their study back in 2007 by Joe Rouge, who was at that time the incoming director of the NSSO. Basically, what's something that's digestible and tractable? And the outcome, just trying to think about this, that I came to, and I don't think that there's one answer to this, but I believe that a reasonable solution is something for a prototype, not for an full-scale operational system, would be something that was roughly 10-10-10, i.e. a platform which would be a real working prototype that could deliver something on the order, not exactly, but on the order of 10 megawatts that would cost less than $10 billion to develop as a prototype, a working prototype, and which would take less than 10 years to accomplish. So 10 megawatts, $10 billion, and 10 years. More than 10 megawatts or so, less than $10 billion, and less than 10 years. I think that would make a truly significant accomplishment, and one that would establish not only the technological feasibility, but also the real economics of space solar power.
Okay, that was the last question. Dr. Kalam, would you like to make some closing remarks? Dr. Kalam, can you hear me?
Well, I have, I believe for the growing population of the world, the power situation is a matter of concern. Energy independence, that is, energy independence means free from fossil fuel, has to become a goal not just for individual countries but to the entire world. And new technologies like nano and the integration of bionode information knocking at our doors. Worldwide, there are also human resource constraints and budget constraints. This is why it becomes relevant for countries to come together on a common platform for a mission synergizing the core competencies. So I have recommended formation of World Knowledge Platform. World Knowledge Platform is my proposal to bring together all the spacefaring nations with core competencies identified. The mission for World Knowledge Platform will be solar power satellite. That is what I would like to say. Then another area, open source space solar solution sharing platform. I am recommending open source space solar solution sharing platform. A lot of young people from the world, they can come and start critical technologies for solar power satellite. These are two of my recommendations.
All right, let's have a big hand for all of our participants. And that'll be it for today. Particularly, I'd like to thank Dr. Kalam and Alex and John for their participation. You can drop off now. They're going to. We've run up to 11 o'clock. We've got another 3 minutes. That's when they sort of throw us out of this room. I guess that's a wrap. We can talk in the halls and maybe steal some coffee and some muffins on the way out.
Mark,
do you want to?
if you go to, I'm Gary Barnhart. I'm the Executive Director of the National Space Society. If you go to our website, www.nss.org, you'll see the links to the full press package that's available. There is both the video that you saw, a series of still images, a brief on what is solar power, a particularly sage work that was done on Peter Gerritsen, I believe as his name is reported on the paper, is there that is addressing bilateral issues in these regards, and a whole host of other resources that are linked to from the site. Any questions about this, you're welcome to be in contact with either the National Space Society, Mr. Menkins, or Dr. Alex, and their contact information is available. If you wish to reach Dr. Kalam, any of us can serve as a conduit to forward the information appropriately. Thank you.
All right.